so we've just actually run into our first dynamic event. You'll notice we didn't have to talk to anybody. We didn't have to accept any quests. We were told the garrison was in trouble and we'd come over to help. We also find a bunch of players already participating in this event, and we kind of just join in. We don't need to group with these players. We don't need to make sure that we're all kind of in the same group. It's kind of a truly cooperative experience. We just find other players in the world, and we can be sure that if they're in this area, that they have the same goals we do, and so that we're going to cooperate, we're going to help each other, and we're going to defeat these centaurs together. So we've actually driven off the centaurs, and now this event will chain into kind of a boss encounter.
Bible 6 gods, what is that thing? It's huge!
That, soldier, is a threat. We're going to take it down. Forward! Destroy them! Charge!
Okay. So this is kind of indicative of something I talked about early. We want the player to feel like a hero. We don't want you doing menial tasks. We want the game to be fun. We don't want you to have to wait until you're really high level before you see cool things in the game world. We want you to immediately see cool things, and we want you to be entertained. And so we throw things like this boss battle, which occurs at kind of the end of our tutorial. Matthew, why don't you switch into a different attunement there real quick. So Matthew just switched into water attunement. He's an elementalist, and so that's the elementalist kind of unique ability, is to switch into different attunements. We can talk about that a little bit more later as we get into some more combat. So this is the end of kind of the tutorial experience. We're going to go into the real world, and from there you'll see how the game kind of opens up, and we'll experience some events, and you can see how things work. We'll continue our personal story here real quick, though.
You were injured when the elemental exploded. Captain Thackeray brought you here personally. You've been unconscious for 3 days. You had lots of visitors.
So one thing to note, this is one of the first places also where the story begins branching based on what decisions we made. So we chose to be a commoner, and so our friends Andrew and Petra have come to visit us. Had we chosen to be a noble, we would have had our noble friend Lord Farron come and visit us. And had we chosen to be from the streets, we would have had our kind of shady friend Quinn, who came to visit us.
You could help others?
Thanks, I will. And thanks for taking such good care of me.
Not at all. Shaemoor'e is in your debt. May Duena protect you in your travels.
So now that we've finished part of our story, we get rewarded for it. Matthew can go ahead and pick a reward. And he also levels up as a result of that. So now he can go into his character panel here, assign a few attribute points, and he can check out his story log, which records everything that he does in his personal story. It's kind of his personal journal, and also lets him know what he's supposed to be doing next. So as we can see here, we're supposed to explore the countryside, talk to Watchman Rebek. And Watchman Rebek is kind of an interesting NPC. He's part of a system called our Scout system, and we had to implement the Scout system because of the way that our dynamic event system works. You can go ahead and talk to him.
The fields around Shaemoor'e are Kryta's breadbasket. We all work hard to get what we need, but it's dangerous when bandits and even the wildlife have it out for you. We'd welcome any help you could give.
So what Watchman Rebek does for us is he helps out a certain portion of our players. So our dynamic event system, kind of by its nature, means that you can never really be sure what you're going to find when you go out into the world. And for players who have a strong exploration kind of drive, and players who love exploring, that's actually a great system. They just wander out into the world, they experience different things. But there are some players who maybe want a little bit more direction. They maybe like checklists to check off, that sort of thing. And so what Watchman Rebek does, and our Scout system does in general, is it helps us gives those players that checklist. It gives those players something to do, so they can go out and experience dynamic events. So, for instance, we might have all of these hearts represent a different NPC who needs help of some kind, and we will go out to Farmer Dia and there are a bunch of little activities that we can do, little things that we can do. They're not necessarily quests or anything big like that. We can maybe help her feed her cows. We can help her water her crops. There are giant worms that are kind of messing up her fields, so we can kill those for her. And as we do that, she'll start liking us more and more, and then eventually this heart will fill in and we can maybe go help the next person. And while we're doing that, while we have these little things to do out there, what'll happen is we'll start encountering dynamic events because things will happen. So now we're going to head out into the field surrounding Shaemoor'e. And one of the reasons we've got Matthew on our headset here is because he's communicating with those people that Randy talked about earlier that are playing with us out in Washington. And the reason we do that is not only to let you guys see what it's like. Oh, look, a jar of bees. You should pick one of those up. So this is a good example of one of the environment objects that we have. We have a lot of objects in the environment that you can interact with. In particular, this one's a jar of bees that somebody seems to have gotten a lot of and spread around town here. We can make use of them. So it looks like there are some bandits actually attacking this farm. Note again that the event kind of just popped up. We didn't have to go accept a quest or anything like that. And when he throws that jar of bees, oh, he missed. So a swarm of bees will come out had he hit with that and attack whoever he hit with. So you notice he's in water attunement. We kind of hit on this a little bit earlier. In water attunement, he becomes much more of a support character. You notice he's healing. You can see the green numbers there. He's healing his allies that are nearby. If he wants to, he can switch back to fire attunement and be much more of a damage dealer. This is part of the versatility that we want all our players to have. And speaking of that, so the other thing is, all of our players in the world can revive any downed player or NPC, and they can do that because we don't want players to have to wait for a particular profession in order to play. We want players to be able to play with whoever they really want to play with, and we want to encourage players to think of other players as always being a positive thing. Other players mean that if you get knocked down, they can get you back up no matter who they are. Another thing to note again, there's a lot of players taking part in this. This event is scaling dynamically to keep it interesting for the number of players that are here. If some of the players leave, it will scale back down. If more players join, it will scale back up. Also of note, Matthew joined kind of when the event was towards its middle. He didn't have to wait for the event to reset before he could participate in it. He just went ahead and participated in it. And he's playing with all these other players that he's not grouped with. They all have common goals, and they're all having a pretty good time playing together. And that's a big important thing for us. It's one of our themes is we want players to run around and see opportunities to be a hero, see opportunities for adventure, and then partake in those. We want to try to remove barriers that would stop them from doing those things. Notice also that as we're getting rid of the farmers, we have Farmer Dia liking us more and more.
Grab a bucket and stand by.
You also hear NPCs shouting sort of direction to players. This again is, we make extensive use of voice work. We have tens of thousands of lines of voice text in the game. And this is so that we don't have to throw a lot of text at players. We can communicate to players through voice. Players can understand what's going on. For example, that one player was just telling people that if they can throw a bucket of water, then they can help out. And there are buckets of water located around. So Matthew went ahead and got one. So if some of the bandits manage to light these hay bales on fire, Matthew can use that bucket to put out the fire. Also note when he picked it up, his skill changed down here, similar to when he picked up that jar of bees. So environmental objects do a lot of different things in the world. So Matthew can also, if he wants to ignore the immediate danger going on, he can go help the crops grow, which might be a little frivolous given that there are bandits trying to kill everyone in the area. So now he's using a skill to heal himself. You'll note that it was what we call a hold skill. So the longer he holds the skill down, the longer he heals. We have all different types of skills in the game. We have skills that change and kind of go in a progression. They're called combo skills. He's got a skill right here that's what we call a charge skill, where the longer he holds it down, the more powerful it becomes. He can release the skill at some point before then to you know, if he needs time. So you can see there it charged up. So again, you see things like other water elementalists running around in water attunements. They can act as kind of healers. You've got rangers, necromancers. Necromancers are actually pretty decent support characters as well. Okay, and you saw there.
My cows thank you. Everyone who eats beef and drinks milk thanks.
Players just finished that last wave of bandits off, and Matthew contributed a lot during that event, so he gets full credit for it. And so one of the themes that we have in the game is we want events to have some sort of impact on the world. This particular event had the players not succeeded. The farmer wouldn't have hay to feed his cows, and so his cow herd would suffer because of that. And then you'd find that merchants who rely on this farmer for supplies of milk and cheese and things like that wouldn't have those things to feed. So Matthew's going to feed one of the cows, which it makes it really happy. And so that's just one of the consequences, one of the smaller consequences in the game of, had this event not succeeded, it would have infected the merchants in the area. Now, events can have more far-reaching consequences. We have events that kind of level entire towns and things like that. Actually, Matthew's trying to get my attention here. So this is a good example. There's actually, these irrigation pipes have stopped working. That's a good indication that something's going on. You can see up there, something is going on. Something's attacking the water pump station up there and causing some damage. And so we would know if the third pipe had been destroyed if this one turns off as well. And then if all of the irrigation pumps turn off, it changes the spawn of creatures in that area. In a similar way, bandits can also attempt to poison this thing. You would see these things spewing out poison if they had succeeded in doing that. So Matthew could, right now, if he wanted to, run up there and try to lend a hand and stop the bandits from destroying those water pipes. We've got a limited amount of time, so we're actually going to head into the city of Divinity's Reach, which you see there, and continue on with our story. So again, your personal story there.
Somebody stop them.
You can hear an NPC telling people that somebody's destroying the pump house and they'd like some help. So we're going to the city of Divinity's Reach, and Divinity's Reach is the capital of the humans. Each race has its own capital. One of the things that we've kind of learned from developing Guild Wars 2 and just looking at the behaviors of MMO players is that MMO players treat cities as social areas. They treat cities as social hubs. They like to go to cities to kind of relax, get away from the regular pace of the game, talk to people, random strangers, friends, take off all their armor and stand around in the middle of the street, dance emote, all of those things that players like to do. And so we figured, if that's the sort of thing that players want to do here, we should build a city that's, that facilitates that as much as possible.
The filth, the crime, the danger. It's nothing like the Grove.
So one of the things we've done, and a few of the things we've done to help facilitate that, is we want to make this just a cool, fun place to hang out. And so we've got a lot of, those little scenes like you just saw there in the city, a lot of NPC life. We go to great lengths to make our cities very inviting, very beautiful, very cool places to hang out. The other thing that we do is we have these things called activities scattered around the city. And what activities are is you can think of them as kind of mini-games that happen outside of the regular flow of gameplay. We're going to pass one on our right over here, which is a shooting gallery. And so this activity is for any players of any level. A level 2 player could come do this. A level 80 player could come do this. This is kind of just, hey, try to beat the high score. Nothing super serious. Just a really good way for players who, maybe want to change a pace in their normal gameplay. Maybe, want to just kind of relax and hang out in the city. This is a good place for them to do that. And we have a variety of activities around the different cities. So this city in particular also has another activity that is a bar brawl, where there's a bar that has kind of a perpetual brawl going on. Players can go break chairs over each other's heads, break bottles, drink, all of that sort of thing. So we're going to head up on to the upper city now.
We've talked enough.